All right, so Andrew Scheer says whoever wins the most seats is the winner, period, whether it's a minority parliament or not. Is it that clear cut? Let's make sure we get some expert advice on the rules before the game is over. Eric Adams is the Vice Dean and Professor of Law at the University of Alberta. He joins me from Edmonton. Professor Adams, thanks for your time today. Good to see you.
My pleasure.
So when Andrew Scheer says convention dictates that whoever wins the most seats tonight, even if it falls short of a majority, gets to form government, is he right?
Well, he's wrong if you're using the word convention in a specific way. And constitutional lawyers know that when we talk about the conventions of the Constitution, we're actually talking about its binding rules, even though they are unwritten. So when he says there's a convention, if you're thinking about it in that sense, he's absolutely wrong. There absolutely is no binding rule which would say that the party with the most seats forms government. He's got his parliamentary traditions a little confused there. If he's talking about what often happens after Canadian elections, then he's on more solid ground in the sense that there's been lots of cases where a prime minister going into the election has been reduced in the number of seats that they hold, and where another party has more seats. So think about when Paul Martin lost to Stephen Harper. Paul Martin said, even though, Stephen Harper, you don't have a majority seats, you have more than I do, you're closer to that majority, I'm going to resign as prime minister, and Stephen Harper formed government.
So I mean, this is really only a major concern or preoccupation possibly tonight if it's the Conservatives or a party other than the Liberals win a plurality of seats, but short of a majority. Because if the Liberals win a minority or a majority, no issue if it's a majority, but if the Liberals win a minority, it's much less complicated, correct?
Absolutely. And that's because we have a rule in our system where the prime minister remains the prime minister, both during the election period and after the results are counted. So Justin Trudeau is the prime minister until he resigns or is dismissed by the governor general. So if he wins more seats, either because he has a majority or because he has a plurality of those seats, he's very, very likely going to stay on as prime minister, simply keep the job, form a new cabinet, and will meet the House and very likely be able to command its confidence. This only really becomes more difficult if Mr. Scheer wins more seats. And in my view, if Mr. Scheer wins something close to a majority and there is a sizable seat gap between him and Mr. Trudeau, then Mr. Trudeau is going to very seriously consider whether he should resign and whether Mr. Scheer should be given an opportunity to form government. Anything less than that, I think Mr. Trudeau hangs on.
Really, anything less than that? So, like, some people are talking about a possibility. Okay, what if Andrew Scheer wins 7 or 8 or 10 more seats than Justin Trudeau? You're saying that might not be enough. That might still allow the current prime minister to say, you know what, I'm going to try and test the confidence of the House and see if I can stay in power.
Well, I would say two things. First is it becomes a question of math at that point. And so if Mr. Scheer has a handful of more seats, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, but he has no other potential partners within the House of Commons. And many of those parties have explicitly said they will not support Mr. Scheer in a minority situation. Then how is he possibly going to be able to pass a throne speech and have majority support?
Right, but some people would say, but does he get to? Look, we know the outcome, but does it seem, for some people, it'll seem like a fairer game if, look, okay, you got more seats, knock yourself out. Put a throne speech in. We know the eventual outcome, but let's follow that path.
Well, I don't think transitioning power in that circumstance makes much sense. And that's why I think our system has developed the way it has to keep the incumbent prime minister in the chair until they resign. So what would be the point of transferring power to Mr. Scheer and all of the upheavals that would entail, only to set him up to fail in the very first House of Commons if there's no capacity for him to win majority support and gain the House's confidence? I think the better system is the one we have, in which Mr. Trudeau has a choice to make. He can choose, if he looks at the electoral seat math, to stay on. He can test that confidence, and if he doesn't get it, he has to resign. And until he gets that confidence, we have another rule called the Caretaker Convention, which says you're not able to exercise the executive powers to their full extent in government until you get that confidence. So he is a caretaker prime minister only until he gets that vote of confidence from the House of Commons.
Good enough. Okay, so a lot of people have invoked the role of the Governor General here, but hers is a different role in this case, right? She really she's not involved from square one tonight, although she's going to be paying close attention for sure. But at what point does she get involved?
Yes, I guarantee her television is fixed closely to these results. But her role, although it becomes critical and important, is actually remains a passive one. And I think, again, that's a virtue of our system in a democracy. So she has the power to appoint the prime minister, and in certain very rare circumstances, she has the power to dismiss a prime minister. But again, it's a passive role. So she's going to be talking with Mr. Trudeau after the election results come in. He remains her prime minister, he remains her first minister, and he is able to say to her, look, these are the results. I think I'm going to try and test the confidence of the House and remain your prime minister. And of course, if that is his decision, she has nothing to say about that, and she will agree to that. If he says, I am going to resign in the face of these results, then she will accept that resignation. And in that case, Mr. Trudeau would advise her to call upon, very likely Mr. Scheer in that case, to try and form a government if he is well ahead on the seat count.
All right, Professor Eric Adams, great to get your perspective today. Thank you for helping us sort all that out. And now we have some context with which to watch those results later tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.